Welcome to Right versus Left News, your daily briefing on the stories that matter, told from both sides of the aisle. I'm your AI host, Chris, and each day I bring you the most important political and cultural news with perspectives from conservative and progressive voices. No spin, no agenda, just the facts and the opinions that shape our national conversation. Let's dive in. Here's what we're tracking today. A deadly ambush in Syria that killed 3 Americans and drew a vow of retaliation from President Trump. A mass shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach during a Hanukkah celebration. A campus tragedy at Brown University with a manhunt still underway. A pocketbook pivot at the White House as the president rolls back tariffs on hundreds of food items. And in Miami, new details and blowback over plans for a Trump presidential library with a proposed fake news wing. All 5 stories developed in the last 24 hours. Before we jump into today's stories, a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting Right vs. Left News. Now, let's get to the headlines. In Syria, 2 U.S. service members and an American interpreter were killed near Palmyra. Officials blame a lone gunman affiliated with ISIS. 3 other U.S. troops were wounded. President Trump called the attack terrible and promised very serious retaliation, while the Pentagon said it happened during a meeting with partner forces. It's the first fatal attack on U.S. forces in Syria in many months. The shooter was killed, and investigators are reviewing how local partners were vetted. On the right, voices highlight the need for a hard strike, a show of deterrence that signals targeting Americans will carry steep consequences. Supporters say a forceful response can shore up credibility and reassure allies. On the left, the focus is on the risk of escalation and the complexity of Syria's security landscape, warning that retribution without a clear strategy could pull the U.S. in deeper. Progressives also push for tougher oversight of partner force vetting. In Sydney, at Bondi Beach, a Hanukkah celebration became the scene of a mass shooting. Multiple people were killed and more than a dozen injured. Police say one alleged attacker was killed and another arrested, and they're probing motive and possible extremist ties. The beachfront and nearby streets were locked down as victims were rushed to hospitals. On the right, coverage underscores that this was a Jewish community gathering, stressing anti-Semitism and the need for tougher counter-terror measures and tighter monitoring of online extremism. Some also point out the limits of strict gun laws against ideologically driven attacks. On the left, attention turns to community trauma and social cohesion, calling for prevention alongside policing, de-radicalization, early warnings, and interfaith outreach. Progressives warn against knee-jerk policies that stigmatize entire communities. At Brown University in Providence, a deadly campus shooting left 2 people dead and 9 injured, most of them students. Classes and exams were halted as hundreds of officers launched a manhunt, and a shelter-in-place order stretched into the night. Authorities released surveillance footage of a suspect in dark clothing. At least 1 victim remained in critical condition late Saturday. On the right, the focus is on the immediate response, coordination among agencies, campus lockdowns, and the need to improve school security and threat reporting. Some caution against politicizing an active investigation, pushing instead for stronger prosecution of gun crimes and better mental health interventions. On the left, advocacy groups and Democratic officials say the tragedy is another reminder of America's gun violence crisis, renewing calls for universal background checks, safe storage mandates, and limits on high-capacity magazines. We'll be right back with more of today's news after this brief message.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks again to our sponsors. Now back to the news. On the economy, President Trump told the Wall Street Journal he isn't sure whether the benefits of his agenda will be felt before the 2026 midterms. And amid frustration over grocery prices, he's rolling back tariffs on more than 200 food items, from coffee to beef to tropical fruit. The move is part of a broader affordability push as cost of living remains a political weak spot. On the right, market-friendly conservatives and business voices back the relief as pragmatic, easing levies on staples without abandoning reshoring and targeted protection. Others warn that blanket tariffs can lift food costs, so narrowing them is a sensible course correction on the left. Democrats and progressive economists argue the broader tariff regime has worked like a tax on consumers. Families, they say, paid much more this year, so dialing back a slice of it is overdue. Many want a sustained rollback and antitrust action to tackle concentration in the food sector. And in Miami, plans for an iconic Trump Presidential Library downtown advanced with a land transfer from Miami-Dade College to the Trump Library Foundation and a proposed fake news wing funded by media lawsuit proceeds. Critics question the process and donor transparency, and litigation over Florida's open meetings law is still underway. On the right, supporters say the library could boost tourism and civic engagement, an economic win near the Freedom Tower, and frame criticism as partisan sniping that ignores potential benefits. On the left, critics say the project blurs public and private interests and may sideline the National Archives' traditional role, raising fears of a curated narrative rather than a research library. They want donor transparency, ethics guardrails, and a pause until the courts weigh in. Quick recap: deadly ISIS-linked attack in Syria prompts a promised U.S. response. Sydney mourns after a Hanukkah night shooting. Brown University reels from a campus attack. The White House trims food tariffs amid affordability angst. And Miami's library fight blends politics, money, and memory. We'll keep tracking the facts and the arguments from right and left, so you can decide where you land. That's it for today's episode of Right versus Left News. Remember, understanding both sides isn't about picking a team. It's about being informed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join us tomorrow for another balanced look at the day's biggest stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.